and welcome to your chemical cycling videos. In this video, we're going to talk about what a biochemical cycle is, and then we're also going to get into the water cycle and the carbon-oxygen cycle. So biogeochemical cycles are basically nutrient circuits. So they're going to involve abiotic and biotic components of an ecosystem, and we're just going to talk about how things like nitrogen, water, and carbon all get transferred around and transformed in ecosystems. So the first one we're going to talk about is the water cycle. And water can really transform over many different processes. One is precipitation. This is water that is now going to fall into the sea or onto land from various clouds in the form of snow, water, sleet, hail. Percolation here is when water will start to actually seep into the ground. So it's similar to runoff and groundwater, but it's actually when the water is getting into the ground. How water goes from a solid here, or a liquid up into a gas is through evaporation and evapotranspiration. Evapotranspiration is from plants, so it's water that's been evaporating from plants, and then obviously evaporation of here, once the temperature increases, this top surface of water is going to evaporate, become water vapor, and turn into more clouds. So the big ones that you really need to know are evaporation, evapotranspiration, which are similar. We're turning from a liquid to a solid, but the evapotranspiration is from plants. Then we have precipitation, which is water going in from a gaseous form into a liquid form. And then percolation over here is when precipitation basically starts to seep into the ground. All right, so this is the carbon cycle. We're going to talk about how carbon is recycled in various ecosystems. So here is our carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. It gets there through various ways. One is cellular respiration. So obviously a lot of plants, especially when we look at these two mammals here, these mammals are going to let off carbon through cellular respiration. In cellular respiration, we breathe in oxygen, and with oxygen and glucose, we create ATP energy. Our waste product of cellular respiration is carbon dioxide, so it gets into the atmosphere through those consumers through cellular respiration. Another thing is once an animal dies, okay, this would kind of be animal death here. Once an animal dies, it's going to start to decay and be broken down and become dead material. So we're going to break that down and bring the carbon back into the soil. How we transform carbon dioxide in the atmosphere into oxygen, for example, would be through photosynthesis. So plants are going to take in carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and through many processes turn it into its own food, and then its byproduct of that is going to be oxygen. One of the biggest human impacts with CO2 in the atmosphere is the burning of fossil fuels, the combustion or burning of fossil fuels into the environment. Once we start to burn those various fossil fuels, we release a lot of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Okay, so next we're going to do this chart here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up my chart. So this is the carbon-oxygen cycle. This is representing CO2 in the atmosphere. Just want to make sure I have that on. Okay, so now we're going to go through this. So this should be something that you already have printed out and you're ready to fill in. So there's various ways that carbon dioxide can enter into the atmosphere. One is through volcanoes. Similar with the nitrogen cycle, volcanoes can also release nitrogen into the atmosphere. Okay, then we have respiration, that like we talked about with our consumers. This is going to be through animals. So the waste product of cellular respiration in animals is going to be carbon dioxide. Plants are going to be eaten by those animals. And through photosynthesis, carbon dioxide is going to enter into the plants where they go through photosynthesis, and then they can release oxygen into our atmosphere. Animals are going to end up dying, and through that we're going to see decay. And then through a series of other processes, that carbon dioxide is going to make it back into the atmosphere once it's been recycled from the soil. Animals also eventually turn into fossil fuels. That's why we call them fossil fuels. Okay, when we're harvesting these fossil fuels in the form of oil, these are actually animals that have been dead for thousands to millions of years. And through combustion of these fossil fuels, or burning of these fossil fuels, we release a lot of CO2 into the atmosphere. The other thing is CO2 can actually be stored in limestone, which then can return carbon to the earth. So just to kind of review everything here, we have carbon dioxide in the atmosphere up here, and it gets there through many different ways. One is by the release of it through volcanoes. One is cellular respiration in plants and animals, releasing that carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Plants can kind of combat that carbon dioxide in the atmosphere by going through photosynthesis and taking in carbon dioxide and releasing oxygen. Animals, once they die and they start to decay, can eventually release that carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere by processes through decomposers, or with animal death over thousands to millions of years, we're going to see fossil fuels in the form of oil. And once we burn those fossil fuels, we're going to release a lot of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Limestone also can store carbon, which then can be released back into soil. So hopefully that you've gotten all of your charts filled out. Now please watch the video on the nitrogen cycle, and then you can start to complete all your assignments.